Super Mario Odyssey is a very colourful game, but which of those colours are the least important? Could you go an entire playthrough without touching any colours? Well, that's what I decided to find out. For these 11 colours, I played through Super Mario Odyssey, pushing the limits as to how far you can get without touching them. Cutscenes don't count, and neither does anything on the player model. I also decided that moons wouldn't count, since that would just automatically eliminate 8 colours, which is boring. With all that out of the way, let's begin with the Cap Kingdom. That grass is black, but this is a cutscene. And now it isn't. Then we have some grey fog, but you can just go around it, and then we get to this path. It's a much brighter colour than the rest of the ground, and the lighting makes it difficult to tell, but it's definitely grey. Luckily, there is a path to the left and right of it, so you can just walk next to it. Then you have a short cutscene unlocking Cappy, and it places you on the path, so grey is eliminated. But now we have Cappy, and he's red. Like I mentioned in the intro, your player model is an exception to the rules, but if you throw Cappy, then he becomes separate. So for now, red can't bounce on him. Moving on, there are some brown pegs and crates, and all the walls in this area are white, but those are all avoidable. There are also some coins, which are yellow. For now, they are out of the way, but even if they were, you could just throw Cappy to collect them, since he wouldn't be part of the player. There's a blue switch, which you once again just throw Cappy at, and then there's this door, which is red and yellow, which you also just throw Cappy at. You just have to be careful when entering the door to not touch the sides. Then there's this white grass. I did actually look into skipping this tower, and there is a glitch called a CRC which would let you teleport Cappy straight up to the checkpoint, which would allow Mario to warp up to the top. However, it doesn't matter since the arena in the boss fight against Top is white. Moving back to the inside of the tower, there's green frogs. You just have to capture them, which is fine because then you are the frog, so it's your player model. There's also a lot of blue in the tower. All the walls and any floor not covered by grass is blue, but they're all avoidable. There are a lot more coins in this section, as well as tiny Goombas and question mark blocks, but they're all also avoidable. Then, leaving the tower, there's a checkpoint which once touched, turns red, so just throw Cappy at it instead. Also, the pole of the checkpoint matches the colour of the moons in the kingdom, so in Cap and Cascade it's yellow, in Sand it's green, etc, etc. With that out of the way, there's also some yellow on the hat buildings, there's a single coin on this path, and then we get to the Topper fight. Topper has a yellow bow tie and pink in his ears, which are easily avoidable, but then the bigger issue is how he is mostly green. Luckily, you can just knock off the hats with Cappy, and then jump on his head, which is white with purple hair. By jumping on him as close to his face as possible, Purple can avoid the hair and move on. But it doesn't end there. After you hit him, a circle of coins is released, so Yellow will have to run away from him as quick as it can, and do the same for most of the other bosses in the game. Topper's hats also have red on them, so while they're all moving around the arena, Red will have to be extra careful to not get hit, or just jump on them. And that's it for Cap Kingdom, what is essentially the game's tutorial, and we already have 3 eliminations. Moving on to Cascade. And we start on green grass. I mean, I didn't really expect green to get very far. Apart from the grass, there's some blue flowers, which are pretty much throughout this entire kingdom, but they're mostly out of the way. There's also a lot of brown. All these rocks are brown, the walls are brown, and this chain jump is on some brown dirt, which it can't leave. Because of that, we can't capture it to destroy this rock to get the first moon. So, what are our other options? Well, the moon is always there inside the rock, so if you could clip in somehow, you could get the moon. There's a clip right over here, but it requires clipping through the brown wall, which would count as touching it. There are other clips where you'd have to get to the mainland over there. This is possible before getting the first moon, but requires a jump which requires touching brown. There's even a jump to get straight up to the top of this cliff, but it also requires touching brown, and that's all our options. So, with them all being impossible, brown is eliminated. Moving on, after breaking the rock, we have the first moon, which is yellow, but as I mentioned in the intro, moons don't count. However, this moon is a story moon, so it has a stand under it which has some yellow on it, and after actually collecting the moon, the middle also turns yellow. So, I did the jump I mentioned before to get to the mainland, and made it to the boss, but the cutscene didn't start. The only reason it doesn't trigger is because of the version I'm on, which is 1.4.1. If I was on an older version, such as 1.0, it would. Now I can't go back to that old version, but if I had a game card with that version on it, I could. So theoretically I could do it, but I'm not going to go out of my way to buy a version 1.0 game card. Instead, I'll grab the first moon, then do the boss fight, and just grab an extra moon after to replace the first one. Anyways, back down in the mainland, I was doing a skip called Dino Skip to jump straight up to the boss, but for blue, I couldn't because of all of these flowers, so blue had to go the long way round. There were some blue burbos I had to avoid, and for some reason I decided to jump up the side of the 2D section instead of just doing it, and there were some more blue flowers. Then, back in the boss fight, which is actually one of the only only places in the kingdom without blue flowers, Madame Brood has a red dress and blue hair. The hair isn't a problem, but you do have to hit her. Luckily, you never actually touch her dress, because when you launch the chain jump at her, it uncaptures her automatically. The chain jump is also yellow, so be careful not to get hit, and it wears a pink hat, so you can't jump on it until after you hit it off. Then I just had to get one more moon, and I could leave the kingdom. Before we move on though, you'll notice that the Odyssey turns red. This isn't really a problem, since Mario's only ever on the Odyssey during cutscenes, if you warp to it, or if you back out of the kingdom selection menu. So just don't do either of those last two things and red will be fine. Moving on to sand. This is where the game really opens up. You don't have to do the story, you just have to get enough moons to leave. So for simplicity, I followed the same route for each color, and I'll just talk about any problems I had, though most of the time you could just go for a different moon. Immediately after landing, orange is eliminated, because of the sand. But it's not all bad news, red can bounce off Cappy now since we unlocked their captain's hat. Moving on, we enter the town, which has a lot of blue in it. The buildings, this fountain, the lampposts are all blue. It's easy enough to steer clear of all that, at least until this moon, overlooking the desert town. It's in my route, but there's a lot of blue around it, so I just jumped in between it. The floor under the moon is yellow, so it can't get it, and stepping back a bit, this building is pink and purple. I jumped from this cactus to this rug to the moon. Then we go through this pipe, and Mario immediately touches three colors, red, yellow, and purple, so these three can't get the moon in here. There's also a ring of blue around the edge of the room, but it's completely avoidable. Going back a bit, this pipe is on top of a pink roof. Getting in was easy, but getting out would be a bit more difficult. Luckily, I was prepared. Skipping ahead a bit, we come to this moon, on top of a stone archway. The intended solution is to capture a bullet bill and fly over to it, but I normally just jump up this icicle. On top of the icicle is an invisible coin that appears once you touch it. By moving quickly, I was able to avoid it. Skipping ahead again to this moon, lost in the luggage, it's a ground pound moon, and has a yellow glow around it. This means yellow can't get it, as well as any other ground pound moons with this glow. Some, like top of a dune, don't have a glow, so those are safe. Skipping ahead to this cactus, once you move it out of the way, another yellow glow is revealed, meaning yellow can't get it, and there's a ground pound moon which doesn't have a yellow glow, but has a bunch of yellow birds surrounding it. I just got the birds out of the way with Cappy and was able to safely ground pound it. And finally for sand, taking notes jump on the palm. These notes cycle through every color in the rainbow, but you can just grab them with Cappy, so it's fine. Then we throw Cappy on the globe, and it met with a split path. You do have to do both kingdoms though, so I just chose the default option first, which is lake. The grass in Lake Kingdom looks blue, except it isn't. When you first arrive to Lake, it's nighttime, and the lighting makes everything look more blue than it is. Once you defeat Rango, it becomes day, and you can see how the grass is actually just green. The walls in this kingdom have a gradient that goes from blue at the bottom to white at the top, so you have to avoid those for the most part. And then we have the moon on the lakeshore. It's a ground pound moon with a yellow glow, so yellow can't get it, but there are also these blue and purple things on the spot. Those, however, are avoidable by ground pounding as far away as you can from them. Then is this moon, end of the hidden passage. You need to get up to this zipper, and the intended solution is to use this bounce flower. Unfortunately, it's red and yellow, but fortunately, you can just jump up and capture the zipper instead. The zipper unzips part of the wall, and luckily it's part of the wall which is more white than blue. Then is Cheep Cheep Crossing. You need to jump in the water, which is clear and not blue, and then swim in, avoiding the blue walls for blue and the Cheep Cheep for red and yellow. Next is Dory Backrider. Dory is blue, but that isn't actually an issue, as you can just swim above her and reach the moon without touching her. Then we get one more moon and make it up to the boss arena. But before the fight, there are some yellow Goombas yellow has to avoid, as well as another bounce flower that both yellow and red can skip. The arena is made up of these tiles, which look sort of blue thanks to lighting, but are mostly grey. Rango throws his hat, which once hit by Cappy reveals a bounce flower, which you were meant to use to boost up and bounce on Rango. You can just jump up to Rango to hit him instead, unless you're yellow, because the top of his head is yellow, so it can't defeat Rango. Instead is to get 3 other moons. With no eliminations in Lake, everyone is able to leave for Wooded. A lot of the Wooded Kingdom is made up of these industrial platforms. They have an orange top, which isn't an issue, and red on the side, which is a bit more of an issue. Red will have to avoid these walls for a lot of the moons throughout this kingdom, starting with tucked away inside the tunnel. This one's not too bad, Red just has to be a little careful to land away from the wall. Later is the nut in the red maze. Apart from the red walls once again not really being a problem, the underside of the platform you're meant to lift with the uproot is yellow, so yellow can't get into the maze, unless you just go through the exit instead. Then we come to the first story objective of Wooded, Road to Sky Garden. First is a bunch of poison for purple to avoid, but it's easy enough to clean up with Cappy, and then you have to jump on the piranha plant, which is red, but you can just jump on the stem instead to kill it. The moon stand is yellow around it, so be careful with that, and then after collecting the moon, the main part of the stand becomes blue, meaning just like in Cascade with yellow, blue can't get this moon. Blue can, however, keep going with the route by doing this jump to make it to the next platform. Then is Cracked Nut on the Crumbling Tower. The Crumbling Tower refers to these yellow platforms. Avoiding them is easy enough though, you can just do a jump straight to this elevator platform. And then Red just has to be careful about the red walls again. Next we enter this tower. Red has to be careful of the doorway, and then once you make it in, you are spawned very close to these yellow petals. There are tons of these petals throughout this tower section, so yellow have to be careful and avoid them. All the walls in this tower are red, as well as the moving platforms and the floor underneath the next moon not planted in the tower. There probably is a way to still get this moon, but I decided to just skip it instead. Stepping back a bit, you're meant to activate this P-switch to spawn a flower road, which blue can't do, and yellow can't use the flower road because all the flowers on it have yellow in the middle. Instead, do this jump to get to the nut and grab the moon. Then our next moon, stretching your legs, is pretty high up. This is fine for 3 of our remaining colors who were able to use the uproot, but yellow and blue had to skip the uproot, so getting this moon requires a fancy 2-player jump. There are more yellow petals around, and you have to jump over some of them to leave this room, and once you do leave, you spawn in a bed of white and yellow flowers. Luckily, you spawn touching only white flowers, but if you think it's too close, there is a way you can jump straight up to the top of this tower instead, avoiding the flowers entirely. Next in my route is Flooded Pipes, which is a room all the way down here. The walls in this area are red again, and these rails have yellow points on the end, so you have to make sure to go through the center of them instead. The first moon is up in this secret area. Normally you'd wall jump up, but since the walls are red, I had to do a cat bounce to get up. Then yellow has to do this scary jump between the yellow points on these rails and these coins. Next was some more rails, which I had to down shoot past, and you can grab the moon and warp back to the boss area, unless you're yellow. If yellow warps to this checkpoint, it gets spawned in the flower bed, touching some yellow flowers. Instead, yellow can just warp to this checkpoint and do those jumps from earlier to get back up. Then, starting the fight, or well, blue can't start the fight. As it turns out, you can't start this fight if you didn't get the first story moon, so blue will just have to get some replacement moons. Actually starting the fight, you spawn touching this yellow flower. I didn't notice this until I was going through the footage and writing the script, so originally I just beat the boss, but there are more than enough other moons yellow could get to replace the multi-moon. There is some challenge in this fight for purple. It's kind of Spewit's color. First off, Spewit's hat is purple, which you first just knock off his head with Cappy before jumping on his head. Then in the next phase, his hat moves around the arena, spreading poison everywhere. You can normally jump on the hat to stop this phase early, but for purple that isn't an option, and it will just have to avoid or hit the hat with Cappy, and avoid or clear up the poison with Cappy. Next, every color gets to move on to Cloud Kingdom. Not much happens here, you just have to fight Bowser and that's it. Although there are a few things to mention. First, Bowser's hat has red boxing gloves, so don't get punched. Then Bowser is yellow and his suit is purple, but when you are punching him, that's the hat gloves doing it, and the hat isn't part of the character model. Bowser jumps around and creates these rings of yellow fire, so yellow has to be extra careful to avoid that. And finally, Bowser's fake hats are purple, so purple has to be careful with those. That's literally it, moving on to Lost. This kingdom contains a lot of blue, purple, and pink. The plants are made up of all 3 of those colors, and the trees are a mixture of blue and pink. Speaking of the trees, normally I'd use this blue tree to jump straight up to that part of the mountain to avoid Klepto stealing Cappy. Since the tree was blue, I had to use the pink tree next to it instead. Also, all the walls in this kingdom are blue. Coming to our first moon on the mountain road, we find a lot of pretty much every color. First of all, this is a ground pound moon with a glow, so yellow can't get it, but also there's plants and butterflies which are all blue, pink, and purple. I was able to get the moon with blue and pink by timing it for when the butterflies were out of the way, but for purple, there were too many of these plants, so I just skipped it. Later is atop a propeller pillar. This moon is on top of this propeller pillar, which is yellow. You can, however, grab the moon, then cat bounce out of the way to avoid it. Just be careful of the coins on the next platform. Immediately after is a propeller pillar's secret. This is a ground pound moon without a glow, but yellow still couldn't get it because it's in the yellow pillar. There's also some more blue, pink, and purple butterflies which are flying around the spot. I was able to avoid them using a similar strategy to the previous ground pound moon. Then, since I skipped Klepto, I had to get close to him to activate him and disable the trigger which causes Cappy to be stolen. This is slightly more challenging for yellow since you have to avoid touching this rising stone pillar. Then we have inside the rising stone pillar. This moon is inside of a rising stone pillar and requires ground pounding one side to reveal it, which is something that yellow can't do. Next is below the cliff's edge, which is above this yellow tree stump. Another cat bounce after collecting the moon is able to help yellow avoid touching it. The caged gold is next. First, the torpedo flashes red when you aim him. Normally I'd crouch under him, but instead I decided to jump over it instead. Then there was this pink tree and these purple leaves to avoid, so I I just jumped up to the moon from a different angle. The moon is above another yellow tree stump, so I just did another cat bounce to avoid it. When I collected our final moon peeking out from under the bridge with blue, I thought that I could have possibly touched the blue ceiling, so to be safe, I went and got inside the stone cage, which also had some blue to avoid but was easy enough. And just like that, our 5 remaining colors have made it to what I consider to be the halfway point of the game, Metro Kingdom. When you first arrive in Metro, it's raining and nighttime, so the lighting is really dark. This makes it very difficult to figure out what color these girders are, so I loaded a 100% save file to look at them with better lighting, which made it clear that it was a desaturated red. You can really see it if you turn up the saturation as well. With that out of the way, I went back to my actual save file and continued playing. Before we leave this first island, there's 2 things, the yellow paint on the ground and the blue tarp under the wire. Since the capture is the electricity ball and not the actual pylon, you're fine though. These tarps also show up throughout pretty much the whole kingdom. Back to red with the girders, since the whole path you're meant to take is made of them, I just jumped down to the mainland instead. Continuing on, we have these checkpoints, which instead of matching with this kingdom's moons, have yellow poles for some reason. Our first moon, Girder Sandwich, is surrounded by 2 girders. It's probably possible to still get this moon without touching them, but for red I just skipped it. Skipping ahead a bit to the city hall. For red I had to jump over these girders, which led to me landing on this brick floor. Due to the lighting, I couldn't tell if it was red or not, but it looked like it could be the same color as the girders. So I loaded up a 100% save file again to check, and yep, they are the same. Back on the actual save file, I was able to jump straight from the heliport to the railing, and then jump into the entrance. There were also some coins on the path to the entrance, so for yellow I just used Cappy to clear them out. The inside of City Hall features posters which have both red and yellow on them. You can just avoid them, but if you really want to, you can remove them by throwing Cappy at them. The walls also have red and yellow on them, although it should be easy enough to just not touch the walls. Actually starting the room, normally I'd use these question mark blocks to jump up, but they're yellow so I can't, at least not if I don't just hit them, turning them brown instead. There's also plenty of mini Goombas in this section, so be sure to clear them out with Cappy. Then, I'd normally jump straight up to this pole, but it has purple coins on it. I was able to grab underneath the coins, then jump off the pole to this platform to the right before jumping back to the pole above the coins. The poles are also yellow, so you'll have to do some jumps to avoid them. Avoiding them is difficult because in this section of the game, Nintendo added a secret force field that pulls you into them. Be careful and jump as far away as you can from them and you should be fine. The next jump is a bit easier as you don't need to go near the pole, but there are some coins to avoid, and the final pole jump is the most difficult one. You'll need to do a triple jump, then do a cat bounce, making sure to pull back so you do bounce off Cappy instead of bonking on the yellow part of the wall. Next, ball jump off this part of the wall, which is thankfully not yellow, and then dive right past the pole, making sure that you are far enough away to not get sucked in, and also make sure you don't land on any of the coins on this platform. Then there's one more jump to get up to the moon City Hall Lost and Found. I was able to do this one pretty easily, but I touched the yellow on the wall without realizing until I went through the footage to write the script. There are plenty of other moons yellow could have gotten to replace this one though, so it doesn't really impact anything. Back to the moon, there's some blue walls to avoid, and the inside of the chest is red. Then, in order for yellow and red to exit the building, you have to do a jump over the floor, and once you leave the building, you get spawned on some more of these red bricks. I looked into skipping the whole City Hall section, and as it turns out there is a jump to do it. However, it has only ever been performed with TAS, and also requires touching red, so it's a no-go. There's also a CRC, which lets you teleport to Metro Kingdom early from the painting and sand. Getting to Metro early means it would be day, and there'd be enough moons available to leave, but the CRC requires crouching on this girder, which is red. With our only 2 options being impossible, red is eliminated, which means we are down to our final 4, so the next color to get eliminated will reveal which 3 colors will be on the podium. Moving on, we have the Mecha Wiggler fight, where the only danger is the yellow orb the boss fires. Just don't get hit for yellow and move on. A bit later we have this moon, who piled garbage on this. While getting up to it, blue has to avoid capturing this pole since it's sitting on a blue wall, and then at the moon, yellow can't get it because it's a ground pound moon with a glow. Then is inside an iron girder. I decided that the crates could be considered yellow, so I just destroyed them with Cappy to get in. Then there were also some coins Cappy could clear out as well. Skipping ahead, we have how do they take out the trash. Normally I jump from this checkpoint to the moon, but there's a yellow outline around the platform, so I did a Cappy vault before that yellow outline to make it to the moon. Then is Dizzying Heights. This moon requires you to climb all the way to the top of City Hall. The pole you climb is white, although there is some yellow that you have to jump around. Then the first pole finishes and the next pole is completely yellow, so yellow will have to skip this moon. Then, right after collecting glittering above the pool, normally I get this hint art, which gives you 200 coins, allowing you to buy a moon later on. The hint art requires ground pounding this spot, which is both yellow and blue, so neither of them can get it. Then there's a blue railing, railing, then left at the cafe, and another blue railing before entering this sub-area. The main moon is fine, and the secondary moon requires jumping on this awning which has yellow on it. Just be careful to only touch the green part and you'll be fine. And that's it for Metro. Moving on to our second and final split path. Once again, I just chose the default option first, which is snow. First off, Snow Kingdom has ice in two colors. There's some that's clear and some that's opaque and blue. The walls surrounding the kingdom are made of the blue ice, and so Blue will have to avoid touching the walls. Our first moon, Captain Toad is Chilly, has Captain Toad inside a small alcove, so Blue will have to be careful not to get too close. Next we enter Shiveria and meet the Shiverians. They have blue, yellow, and pink on them, so those three colors will have to be careful. Next is shopping in Shiveria. It requires using this pink door so Pink can't get in, then the floor inside is both yellow and purple, so neither of those two can get it, and Blue doesn't have enough coins because it couldn't ground pound the hint art in Metro Kingdom. Then normally I bounce on the snow cone stand to get up to this chest for a moon. The snow cone stand has a line of coins above it, so Yellow has to clear those out with Cappy, and then also avoid the yellow around the outside of the bouncy platform. The archway in front of this chest has blue on it, and every other archway and doorway in Shiveria also do, so Blue has to be careful to avoid touching those. Shining in this snow in town is a ground pound moon with a yellow glow, so Yellow can't get it, and then it's time for the main rooms in Shiveria. Starting with the bottom left room, the Wind Chill Cavern. There's some purple poison, coins for Yellow, and some blue ice to avoid as well. The story moon here has a stand which has yellow around the outside of it, and that's it for this room. Then is the bottom right room, Icicle Cavern. Blue can't do this room since the floor is made entirely of the blue ice. Apart from that, the secondary moon here, Ice Dodging Goomba Stack, requires you to stand on this switch with a stack of 4 Goombas. The switch is yellow, but you can avoid touching it by uncapturing the Goomba stack above the switch, and it'll still trigger. The story moon has another stand with yellow around the outside, and then we get to move on to our final room, the top left one, Snowy Mountain. This room has the snow that you clear out of the way. Hidden beneath the snow are some glowing ground pound spots, so Yellow has to be careful not to touch any. There's also a bounce flower you'd normally use, but it has yellow on it, so Yellow just skips it. We only have to get the secondary moon here, and we can leave to Seaside. First of all, that sand is yellow, and it spawns you right on it, so Yellow is dead, which means that we are down to our final 3 colors. These 3 have made it to the podium, but we still need to find out what placement they get. Apart from the sand, there's not really much to talk about. There's these blue platforms underwater, which are easily avoidable. This dory that has a moon is purple, but its underside is white, so it's not really a problem. And there are these seaweed enemies called Komboos, some of which are pinkish purple. These guys show up for 3 moons in my route. First is Glass Palace Treasure Chest. For this one you can just swim over them. Then is Under a Dangerous Ceiling. Here they pose a bit more of a threat, but by moving quickly you can make sure they don't reach you. Finally is Bubbling Northern Reaches. These guys appear from the ground when you shake attack these spots with a Cheep Cheep. Avoiding them can be a bit of a problem as attacking can kill them, which I would count as touching even if they don't physically touch. Instead I used Mario by ground pounding the spots and used Cappy to kill the pinkish purple Komboos so they weren't an issue. And that's literally it for Seaside. Next is Luncheon. First off, all the lava in this kingdom is pink. Of course that isn't a problem because you want to avoid the lava. Then we make it to the fight against Spewit. Just like in Wooded Kingdom, Purple has to avoid his hat and the poison, but then after defeating him he spawns a regular story moon, which means a moon stand, which becomes blue. So Blue can't beat the fight. But is it possible to skip it? Well, yes, you just have to do this jump, which lands you right on the blue part of this mountain. Thankfully, there's another method. I just need to use lava bounces to make it to that salt island all the way over there. But I need a life up hut first. Since I haven't made it to the shop here yet, I left to Wooded, bought the heart, and came back. Alright, let's give this a go. There we go. Now after this point, Blue completely breaks off from the route, so we're just gonna come back to Blue after I go through the rest of the normal route with Pink and Purple. First we have overlooking a bunch of ingredients. This moon is on a mountain, and the mountains in this kingdom go through a gradient from green to blue to purple to pink. This moon is on the blue part though, so both Pink and Purple can get it. I just sort of wanted to mention the mountains since they contain both colors. Then skipping ahead a bit, we have the Fork sub-area. The problem here, at least for Pink, is getting to it. Normally I'd capture a lava bubble and swim in the lava to reach it. Unfortunately the lava is pink, so instead I had to go back to the town and jump across these stakes. There were 0 problems in the Fork room, it was just getting to it, but right after the Fork room is atop the jutting crag. Normally to get there I'd capture a lava bubble and swim in the lava, but once again the lava is pink, so I had to warp to the town again and get there the long way. Later is light the lantern on the small island. This moon requires you to light this lantern, and our only way to light it is to use a lava bubble, which would require touching the pink lava, so Pink couldn't get it. Then there were no more problems for Pink or Purple, which means that we can go back to Blue and follow it through its journey. At first I did try to keep following the route from where I was, so I got Island of Salt floating in the lava, and then had to get to the fork room, but there were no lava bubbles for some reason. Well, as it turns out, before you defeat Spewit, there are basically no lava bubbles anywhere in the kingdom, so instead I had to lava bounce to the room. Then in the fork room, the walls are a gradient from green to blue, so I couldn't get either of the moons as they are both at points well past the wall turning blue. So then normally in the route would be atop the jutting crag, but once again I have no lava bubbles, so I jumped across those tiny stakes from earlier to get to the town, and eventually made it to the point right after the boss fight. I decided to try and follow the route again, so I got corner of the magma swamp where there was blue around the platforms, and I also decided to get the secondary moon there. Ben was overlooking a bunch of ingredients, which as I mentioned before is on the blue part of this mountain, so it's impossible. Because I couldn't get it, I decided to go gambling instead. Inside of the slot room there's actually a fair bit of blue. It's around the edge of the floor, on the carpet, on the counter, and on the walls, but it's all easily avoidable. Then I was able to get, is this an ingredient 2, golden turnip recipe 1, and atop a column in a row. Then the route meets back up with the salt island, so from here I had to improvise. I went through the cheese area and tried to get atop the jutting crag. Unfortunately the wall is blue, so I couldn't quite jump up there. Then I wanted to get across the area the cheese story moon would normally reach to, because that would give me access to some more moons, so I had to go buy another life up heart to make it. After I crossed the lava, I entered this lava bubble magma room, which was easy, then was surrounded by tall mountains. I think that part is too blue, which I couldn't get. Then making it up to the meat, I was unable to capture it since I hadn't completed the rest of the story. Instead I did a lava bounce to reach the Capulus sub-area. In the sub-area I found out that most of the platforms were blue, so that wasn't happening. So I left the sub-area and found one of the only lava bubbles available in the kingdom's current state. I used the lava bubble to get to the remote island and got both moons there, then thought about doing taking notes swimming in magma for about 2 seconds before remembering that the notes turn blue and that I can't easily use Cappy for them. I tried to take the lava bubble to other parts of the kingdom, but it was completely restricted to the area it spawned in. At this point I needed 5 more moons, but I felt like I had exhausted all my options. I went back to town and immediately remembered that I could buy a moon. I just needed a few more coins, so I did a bit more gambling and bought the moon. Then I remembered there was a timer challenge and a Lady Goomba moon near the Odyssey, so I guess I hadn't really exhausted all my options. The timer challenge ended up being impossible because some of the blocks you need to wall jump on were blue, but the Lady Goomba moon was possible. Then I went back to atop the jutting crag and tried a 2-player jump similar to in Wooded. Okay, that was really easy. I should have done that earlier. Since I was able to make it on top of the mountain, I was also able to get the second golden turnip. Taking it back to the town was a slight issue because this mountain you're meant to jump over was blue. Instead I did a 2-player Cappy bounce to jump around the mountain. At this point I needed 1 more moon, and I felt like I had tried everything. For real this time. Maybe. I captured the binoculars and started looking around, and then my eyes fell on it. Ooh. Could I get to wherever that is? When I said wherever that is, I was talking about the painting that leads there, which is in Wooded Kingdom in an area that I don't have unlocked because Blue can't progress the story there. Okay, let me rephrase that. An area that I shouldn't have unlocked, because you can get up there before completing any story. You just have to do this pretty simple jump and the painting is right up there. Oh, as it turns out, this painting does not unlock until after beating Spewit, so since Blue can't progress Wooded's story, I took the Odyssey back to luncheon, and actually there is something obvious that I'm missing. Well, sounds like I figured it out. I collected 15 purple coins, bought the chef outfit, and got the moon in the outfit room, a strong simmer. And with that one final moon, I was able to leave to Ruined. Ruined is a very short kingdom. In fact, it only has one thing to talk about. The dragon. It's purple, as well as its electricity attacks, but that's less important. It's a very desaturated purple, but increasing the saturation shows its true colors. Or should I say color, because it's just purple. You can remove the pegs from its head without actually touching him, but then you have to ground pound him, and the ground pound spot is also purple. This means that purple gets 3rd place, and now it's a battle between blue and pink, moving on to Bowser's Kingdom. As it turns out, there's not much to talk about for Bowser's Kingdom either. There's these pink and blue clouds which dissipate over time, so if you're ever stuck, you can just wait for a bit. Pokey does have a blue body with a pinkish red face. Harriet's bombs are blue, but you already want to avoid them and hit them with Cappy, so it's fine. And both Topper and Harriet have pink on them, but it's all out of the way and completely avoidable. There's no more problems for the whole rest of the kingdom, which means that our final 2 colors are moving on to the final kingdom of the game, the Moon Kingdom. So, with both pink and blue, I made my way to the Moon Cave, did Moon Cave skip, made it to the chapel, and started the final fight. And with the fight out of the way, all that was left was to escape from the moon. And just like that, it is possible to beat Super Mario Odyssey without touching blue or pink. But we can't have a tie. That's boring. So what could the tiebreaker be? Well, as it turns out, Mario Odyssey's story doesn't end after you beat Bowser and escape the moon. Once you make it back to the Mushroom Kingdom, Cappy suggests we head up to Peach's castle, and once you do, you find a toad which tells you that Peach has gone missing again. You then have to go to each kingdom and find Peach before she finally returns home. But it's not that simple. Peach only shows up in each kingdom if you can complete World Peace in it. So the point I'm getting at is that the tiebreaker is to complete World Peace and talk to Peach in as many kingdoms as you can. Whichever color can talk to her in the most kingdoms will be crowned the winner. And so, it begins. First we have Cap Kingdom, which is completely free since going through the game normally includes achieving World Peace here. Then is Cascade, where the same can be said, but there are some blue flowers near Peach. They're not a problem though. Then we get to Sam. In this kingdom I did not do any of the story objectives, so we're gonna have to start that now. The first two story moons are completely free for both colors, and then we get to the inside of the inverted pyramid, where the wall in the 2D section is blue. After some deliberating, I decided to allow it, since if I did the color challenge in a 2D game, I would not count the background, and this blue wall here is the background for this 2D section. Then, after we reach the top of the pyramid, Harriet has some more blue bombs as well as some pink on her, but both colors are able to defeat her. Then we enter the pit, where we find a lot of very blue ice. I was able to jump to this pillar, then the next pillar, then the next 3 platforms, and then I had a bigger issue. More blue ice. But I was able to do this jump to reach the bounce flower. Then is this Bullet Bill section where you'd normally stop at the ice platform in the middle, but instead you can just go around the side, and then we make it to Knuckletech's arena, which is made up of this sand looking material which is very blue. You could argue it's the lighting, but I disagree as the arena is actually very well lit. And anyways, Knuckletech is blue, so you wouldn't be able to punch him with his fists. And so this is the first kingdom that blue could not talk to Peach in. Knuckletech's fists also have pink on them, but it's a part you throw Cappy at to capture it, so it's completely fine. Pink is able to defeat Knuckletech and talk to Peach. Next is Lake, which is another completely free one, as the one multi-moon here was in my route, and then it's Wooded. Wooded has some story to actually complete, but if you recall, blue can't even get the first story moon because of the moon stand. We also know that you can't skip this, as I did get up to the fight with blue earlier and it didn't trigger. So blue can't talk to Peach in this kingdom. But what about pink? Well, it's completely free. There's pretty much no pink in the entire kingdom. Next is Cloud, which is completely free for both colors, and then we have Lost. In Lost there is no story to complete, so we just have to talk to Peach. There's the pink and blue plants, but they're not really an issue. Pink is able to talk to Peach, but for blue there's a bit more of a problem. To get up to Peach, you need to ground pound the switch which spawns these walls, and then wall jump up the walls all the way to the top of the kingdom. The walls are yellow, but they don't actually extend all the way to the top, and you're instead meant to wall jump off these blue walls for the very end. However, the section of the wall that you are meant to jump off of is small enough to let me get up there with a well-timed dive. Next is Metro, where we have to talk to the remaining 2 musicians, fix the problem in the sewers, and then complete the festival. There are no problems for either color until we make it to the festival. First we have the blue background wall on this 2D section. Like I said before though, this doesn't count as it's the background for the 2D Mario. And then we go through the pipe and have to walk on these pink girders. Blue is able to complete the festival and talk to Peach, but pink isn't. Next is Snow, where blue can't finish the story because it requires entering this room where the floor is made up entirely of blue ice. Pink is able to complete the story with minimal issues and is able to talk to Peach. Next is Seaside, where completing the story and talking to Peach was completely free from both colors, and then we have Luncheon. If you recall, blue can't get the first story moon because of the moon stand, which means that blue can't finish the story, so it's up to pink. Through my playthrough, I did get the first 2 story moons and the first multi-moon, so we start in the inside of this mountain where there's pink lava that you're meant to use the lava bubble to climb up. Instead, I was able to jump on these rolling pillars and make it to the end. However, to actually spawn the moon, you need to light this lantern, and lighting the lantern requires using a lava bubble which you can't capture because it's in the pink lava. I did try capturing the lava bubble while it was in the air and moving it while it falls, so I never touched the lava, but that isn't how it works, as the lava bubble doesn't take any input until it has landed. I also came up with the genius idea of lighting Mario on fire and carrying it to the unlit flame, which isn't a game mechanic. I looked into trying to skip this moon, but the cannon that takes you up to the final fight does not appear until after collecting it. Then we have Ruined, which is completely free for both colors. The same can be said for Bowser's. Then is Moon, where Peach only shows up if you talk to her in every other kingdom first, so now the color is able to talk to her. And finally we have Mushroom, where she doesn't show up until talking to her on the moon, so once again neither color can talk to her. With every Peach checked, it's time to reveal the final count. To check, all we have to do is talk to Toadette, which unlocks a bunch of moons you get for completing objectives. Moons 60 and 61 are both awarded for talking to Peach, so all we have to do is check this number. So, starting with blue, the final count is 9, and then pink, its final count is 11, meaning that blue gets second and pink is the champion, getting first. It was a close battle between the two, but unfortunately for blue, this game barely has any pink in it.